Steph Curry to Boston? Plus, Queta's huge payday, Mitch Robinson hype, and a DeRozan reunion waiting to happen. What's going on, Celtics fans? Welcome back to Celtics Daily Hub. So if you're a die-hard Celtics fan sitting anywhere in this country, Boston, LA, doesn't matter where you're watching from, you are going to want to stick around for this one because the front office has been anything but quiet this summer. Smash that subscribe button, drop a comment telling me which story you want to see happen, and let's get right into it. Could Stephen Curry actually end up in Boston? All right, let's start with a story that is dominating every Celtics group chat right now, and it all traces back to one seismic move Boston already made this offseason, trading away Jaylen Brown. Let's set the table first. This summer, in a move that genuinely shocked the basketball world, the Celtics moved on from Jaylen Brown, their second-best player and a Finals MVP. In return, Boston brought back a package built around Paul George, along with multiple first-round picks and a couple of second-rounders. Now, on the surface, trading a top 15 caliber wing for an aging Paul George and picks looked like a step back. But here's the thing. That George contract isn't just a throw-in. It's a trade chip. And Boston might already be using it to line up something much bigger. Enter Zach Lowe. On a recent episode of his show, Lowe was running through hypothetical trade scenarios around the league, and this one came out of the Golden State Warriors' failed pursuit of LeBron James in free agency. Lowe's premise was simple. If the Warriors ever got desperate enough, would they consider trading Stephen Curry? His answer was that Golden State would basically never move Curry unless Curry himself demanded it. That part is not up for debate. But when Lowe started sketching out fantasy trades just to see who could theoretically put together a real offer, Boston's name came up. His framework had the Celtics sending Paul George's expiring contract, along with draft compensation, back to Golden State in exchange for Curry. Now pump the brakes for a second, because I want to be clear about what this actually is. This is a media personality running a hypothetical, not an insider reporting real trade talks. But it's not coming out of nowhere either, because just one day before that, Heavy.com quotes Cy Mohan dropped a separate report digging into exactly how realistic a Curry to Boston move might be, and the details there are genuinely fascinating. According to that report, the Warriors are reportedly already thinking about life after Steph. There's a report out there suggesting Golden State's front office is quietly building for a post-Curry era. That's a wild sentence to even type out for a guy who's a top 10 player of all time and the greatest shooter to ever touch a basketball. But here's the part that should calm Celtics fans down. Curry himself is not trying to leave. According to San Francisco Standard insider Danny Emmerman, who appeared on 95.7 The Game, everything Curry has said publicly, and everything people close to him have said privately, points to one thing. He wants to finish his career in Golden State. Plain and simple. Emmerman did leave a small crack in the door, saying things could theoretically go sideways, and Curry could have a change of heart. But as of right now, both Curry and the organization are pointing in the same direction. Retirement as a Warrior. But here's where it gets interesting again. Emmerman also revealed something that trade-hungry fans are going to love. Curry, who is on an expiring contract worth $62.5 million, might actually be open to taking a pay cut. Not to leave the Bay Area, but to help Golden State build a real contender around him. Basically, if the front office could use Curry's discount to land a genuine difference-maker to pair with him and Draymond Green, he'd reportedly consider it. So why is Golden State sitting on their hands right now instead of making a big swing? According to ESPN's Anthony Slater, the Warriors already know they're not on the level of teams like Oklahoma City or San Antonio, and they seem at peace running it back with basically the same aging core that won 37 games and missed the playoffs. And this is where the post-Curry chatter really started. Veteran insider Tim Kawakami reported that Golden State Governor Joe Lacob has his sights set on the 2027-28 season, when Curry, Draymond Green, and Jimmy Butler all come off the books simultaneously, potentially opening up more than $100 million in cap space. Kawakami's reporting suggests Lacob wants this organization to prove it can build a contender both with Steph Curry and after him. So where does that leave Boston? If Golden State ever does make Curry available, and to be clear, that is still a big if, Boston Sports Journal's Jack Simone laid out exactly how the Celtics could get a deal done. The framework? Boston sends Paul George's contract, which becomes an expiring deal next summer, along with first-round draft compensation, over to Golden State in exchange for Curry. Now, let's talk about why Celtics fans should actually care about this, beyond just the name value. If Boston somehow pulled this off, they would instantly vault into title contention in the Eastern Conference. Pairing Jason Tatum with Stephen Curry is the kind of superstar combination that changes a franchise's trajectory overnight. And for what it's worth, insiders have made clear that Tatum is the one untouchable piece on this roster. After moving Brown, Boston has drawn a hard line that Tatum isn't going anywhere, no matter what deal gets discussed. Look, I'll give you the reality check right now. The odds of this actually happening are extremely low. Curry has made it about as clear as a player can that he wants to retire in Golden State, and a franchise legend forcing his own trade after this many years of loyalty would be almost unheard of in modern NBA history. But the fact that Boston even has the assets in place, thanks to the Jaylen Brown trade, to make a real run at a top 10 player of all time if the situation ever changed, that's a story worth watching all season long. Drop a comment below. Would you want the Celtics to go all in and offer this package if Golden State ever picked up the phone? Neemias Queta locks in a franchise-changing extension. All right, story number 2, and this one is already official. No hypotheticals here. Neemias Queta is staying in Boston, and he's staying for a long time. The Celtics have locked up their starting center on a 4-year, $56 million extension that runs all the way through the 2030-31 season. ESPN's Shams Charania was the one who broke the news, with Queta's agent, Bill Duffy of WME Basketball, confirming the terms shortly after. And if you want to talk about a value contract, this might be one of the best in the entire NBA. Let's talk structure for a second, because the way Boston built this deal is genuinely smart cap management. The Celtics first exercised Queta's existing team option for next season, which was worth just under $2.7 million. That option becomes a bridge year before the new extension money kicks in. Why does that matter? Because it lets Boston delay the bigger salary hit by one more season, giving them room to absorb other roster costs, most notably the 3-year, $47.4 million deal they just handed Mitchell Robinson in free agency. According to NBC Sports Boston's Chris Forsberg, once Queta's extension actually kicks in, both he and Robinson will individually earn less than 10% of the projected salary cap. 2 starter-caliber centers, locked in at that price point. That is about as efficient as roster building gets under the current collective bargaining agreement. Now let's talk about why Queta actually earned this money, because the numbers are legitimately special. Last season, the 26-year-old out of Lisbon, Portugal, appeared in 76 games, starting 75 of them. He averaged 10.2 points, 8.4 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks a night in just over 25 minutes of playing time. And he did it while shooting an absolutely absurd 65.3% from the field. That mark ranked 3rd in the entire NBA, and it set a new Celtics franchise record for single-season field goal percentage. On top of that, Queta became the first Celtic since Robert Parrish, all the way back in the 1990-91 season, to record at least 100 blocks, 600 rebounds, and 60 steals in a single year. That's the kind of company that puts a player in franchise history conversations. He also finished 4th in Most Improved Player voting and posted a net rating of 13.2, which ranked 5th among every player in the league. Let that sink in for a second. A guy who was on a 2-way contract not even 3 years ago just finished top 5 in the NBA in net rating. This isn't some feel-good backup story anymore. This is a legitimate frontcourt anchor that the rest of the league simply slept on. Now, it wasn't a completely smooth ride. Queta's playoff performance had some real bumps, mostly due to foul trouble that limited his minutes in multiple games. Celtics president Brad Stevens even addressed it directly at his end-of-season press conference, saying that keeping Queta on the floor without fouling out was the central challenge of his postseason. There were reportedly 2 separate games where he picked up early fouls and was out of the game within 4 minutes of tip-off. But give the guy credit. He responded in the biggest possible moment, putting up career playoff highs of 17 points and 12 rebounds in Game 7 against Philadelphia, logging more than 32 minutes off the bench in that series-deciding loss. So how does this connect to the Mitchell Robinson signing we're about to get into? Robinson has actually come off the bench more than he started over his last 3 seasons with the Knicks, which strongly suggests Brad Stevens is viewing Queta as the unquestioned starter, with Robinson coming in as the enforcer behind him. That's a center rotation most teams in this league would kill for: rim protection, offensive rebounding, and physicality on both units, all locked in for the next several years without breaking the bank. Bottom line, this Queta extension might end up looking like one of the best value signings of the entire offseason across the whole NBA, not just in Boston. Let me know in the comments, did you expect Queta to get paid like this a year ago? Mitchell Robinson's signing is getting more and more love. Speaking of Mitchell Robinson, story number 3. Boston's newest big man continues to pick up praise from around the league, and this time it's coming from 2 respected NBA voices who know exactly what they're talking about. Quick recap for anyone who missed it. The Celtics used their full non-taxpayer mid-level exception this summer to sign Robinson, a recently crowned NBA champion, to a 3-year deal worth roughly $47.3 million. And on a recent appearance on the Celtics Daily podcast, no relation to us, but hey, great show, Fred Katz of The Athletic broke down exactly why he loves this move for Boston. Katz's take was pretty straightforward. He called it a great signing, explaining that Robinson fits Boston's needs on both ends because they needed extra size at the center spot, especially with the previous starting center not really working out after a trade. He described Robinson as exactly the type of rim-diving, vertical threat center this roster was missing, along with being a legitimately good, potentially great interior defender. But the part of Katz's breakdown that really stood out was his comparison to a name every Celtics fan knows well, Robert Williams III. Katz explained that while the two aren't identical players, there's real overlap. He pointed out that Williams was probably the better weak side helper when stationed off the ball, using his instincts to protect the rim from the backside. Robinson, on the other hand, is more of a straight-up, head-on rim protector, the type of guy who's defending the actual point of attack in a pick and roll, meeting the drive vertically at the rim rather than rotating over from the weak side. Katz's read is that Robinson might actually be the better option specifically in that head-on role. Now here's an interesting wrinkle for the season ahead. Robinson will likely begin his Celtics tenure coming off the bench behind Neemias Queta, the same guy we just talked about. But given his skill set and the praise he's getting, don't be shocked if he ends up starting at points throughout the season, especially if Boston wants to manage minutes or matchups. The second endorsement came from ESPN's Brian Windhorst on the Shump Street podcast, and his angle was all about hustle plays, specifically 50-50 balls. Windhorst explained that when Robinson and Josh Hart were both on the floor together with the Knicks, those loose ball situations basically stopped being 50-50 at all. He described them as more like 60-40 in New York's favor, sometimes even better. Over the course of a full game, or especially a playoff series, that adds up to a significant number of extra possessions that most teams simply don't have access to. Windhorst also revealed something that should make Celtics fans smile. Apparently, teams around the league specifically game planned around getting Robinson off the floor, because his rim presence was disruptive enough that opponents would intentionally foul him to send him to the free throw line, just to get him out of the game. Windhorst's framing was that Robinson was seen as a wrecking ball to opposing game plans, and that disruptive ability is exactly why Boston prioritized landing him in free agency. Now let's zoom out to the bigger picture at center for Boston, because this rotation is suddenly one of the deepest in the league. You've got Queta and Robinson as 2 legitimate rim-running, shot-blocking bigs who both thrive in drop coverage. Behind them, Luka Garza gives you a 5-out shooting threat who can also hold his ground and deter drives when he's anchoring the paint. And then there's rookie Chris Senick Jr., who profiles more as a power forward long-term, but has the athleticism to play some minutes at center as a weak side helper, a role that should remind Celtics fans a lot of what Robert Williams did in his final seasons in Boston. Think about where this team was heading into the summer. There were real, legitimate questions about the big man rotation. Now, it might be the deepest, most versatile group of size that Boston has had in years. Let me know in the comments, Queta or Robinson, who do you think ends up starting more games by the end of the season? Could DeMar DeRozan be the next Celtics? All right, last story of the day. And this one is all about a potential veteran addition that could round out the roster even further: DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan, the NBA's 18th all-time leading scorer, was surprisingly cut loose by the Sacramento Kings earlier this offseason. That move immediately raised eyebrows around the league, because DeRozan can still absolutely put the ball in the basket. Last season with the Kings, he averaged 18.4 points per game, and for his career, he's sitting at 21.1 points per game. That's not a guy who's washed. That's a guy who got squeezed out by a roster situation. And according to Bleacher Report's Dan Favale, the best possible landing spot for DeRozan in free agency is right here in Boston. Favale's reasoning centers on spacing and shot creation. He points out that the Celtics have enough shooting around the roster to cover for the fact that DeRozan isn't a knockdown three-point shooter, and that Boston could genuinely use another secondary shot creator to take pressure off Jason Tatum, Peyton Pritchard, and Derek White. Favale even threw a bit of shade at the current depth chart, essentially saying something has gone wrong for the offense if Mike Conley is being leaned on as a primary ball handler, and that Boston can't fully bank on Paul George to stay healthy and available for every single game. DeRozan doesn't just score either. He's a real playmaker at this stage of his career, averaging better than 4 assists per game with Sacramento last season. And here's a role that lines up perfectly with Boston's current roster construction. Paul George, Boston's new addition from the Jaylen Brown trade, isn't the same type of shot creator off the bounce that Jaylen Brown was. DeRozan could step in and fill exactly that kind of shot creation role in the offense if he signs with the Celtics. Now, there is a real financial catch here. Favale himself acknowledges that adding DeRozan would push Boston back into the luxury tax, which is something the front office has been actively trying to avoid as they work to reset their repeater tax clock. But he also notes that it's not necessarily a deal-breaker long-term. The Celtics could always duck back under the tax line later with a smaller trade around the deadline or ahead of the 2027 draft. Favale also mentioned that Miami and Utah could be in play for DeRozan. And look, if you're a Celtics fan, the Miami Heat landing a proven scorer like DeRozan is probably the last thing you want to see happen in your own conference. So there might be some extra incentive for Boston to move quickly here, especially now that LeBron James has already found his team and other free agents around the league are expected to start finalizing their own decisions. If Boston wants DeRozan, the smart move is likely to get it done sooner rather than later, before another contender scoops him up. Let me know down in the comments. Would you want Boston to eat the tax bill for a DeMar DeRozan signing, or should they stay disciplined and run it back with what they've got? If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Which of these 4 stories are you most locked in on? I read every single one of them. Thanks for watching Celtics Daily Hub, and I'll see you in the next one.